I think the only one of his I've seen is that remake of The Hills Have Eyes, which I thought was significantly better than it had any right to be.
Yeah, he had that movie from, I think it was last year, maybe the year before. Years don't mean much anymore. Crawl.
It's quite a prolific career for someone who, like I say, I have not managed to catch much of this stuff at all.
Hello, my name is Rob Simpson and welcome to Directors Uncut. If this is your first episode, we put filmmakers from all genres and all corners of the globe onto a huge list that covers everything from Dutch provocateurs to Hollywood golden era studs. Then we turn it into a lottery of directors by using a random number generator to pick a name out of the hat. Whatever name comes out, myself and some guest hosts discuss them and their work through 2 films. Now this week we're talking about Alexandre Aja, and this is the latest episode of our weekly push to move all of the Patreon episodes on the main feed before the season 2 break. For the majority of the show I will be joined by Graham Williamson. He's a writer for the Geek show and Horrified magazine, as well as a filmmaker in his own right. And then at the back end of the show, I'm joined by Kat from the Hollywood News and Andy from Road to Knowhere. And this is a new recording bit at the end. So enough of the intro. Let's just jump into the recording and talk about Alexandre Aja from, I think this must have been April 2021.
The only thing of his that I think I had seen before was I saw his remake of The Hills Have Eyes, which is very nasty. I don't think you can make a remake of The Hills Have Eyes and not have it be very nasty. It struck me either way as probably more interesting than it had any right to be.
Yeah, for me, I don't think I've actually seen any of his films before Crawl. He's just one of those directors who's just always there.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. I always bracketed him with someone like Jamais Collet Serra, where they get a lot of praise for being kind of unpretentious journeymen, and there aren't many of those about. And whenever I read those takes, I always sort of think, well, yeah, but I also require them to be good.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I kind of tarred him with a brush that he couldn't get rid of, no matter how good a filmmaker he could become, no matter what films he could ever produce. But any director who takes Joe Dante's, I think it was his directorial debut back in the 70s, I think the sequel was for James Cameron, the Piranha movies under Roger Corman.
Oh, yeah.
And makes that into Piranha 3DD.
Yeah. I mean, nobody ever said he was a highbrow director.
No. I mean, I guess I understand the past version of me for putting him in just to make the sort of the brows of variable quality. So it's not all highbrow stuff. We've got some stuff in here which isn't that, I guess.
But he's a weird guy, isn't he, Archer? Because you always get the sense that he wants to step outside of being that guy who does really nasty horror movies. But every time he does something that's, something like Horns or The Ninth Life of Louis Drax, something that's still kind of horror-tinged, but it's a noticeably different kind. And every time he does that, it just tanks. It absolutely goes down in flames.
You know, here we go. I'm trying to reference names of directors, but it's completely escaped me. But Gore Verbinski, there we go. It didn't take that much digging, that one. He tried to get out of the shadow of the Pirates of the Caribbean movie by making that, I don't know what you describe, his passion project.
Are you thinking of Cure for Wellness?
I am thinking of The Cure for Wellness. That was a left turn, which nobody saw coming. And maybe Aja's got one of them in him. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
But not yet.
Because we decided to Crawl, which is his most recent work. I know he is tinkering with something else, but as we record, that is his most recent work. And we also did, I was surprised to find out it wasn't his first film, but it was his breakthrough film, Haute Tension.
Yeah, there's a sort of a apocalypse movie he did before that, called Theory or something, which is just impossible to even... There's no stills of it, never mind an actual print of it out there you can find.
Apparently it has a very young Marion Cotillard in it, which you'd think would inspire someone to reissue the damn thing, but...
Maybe some point in time, I mean, Blu-ray companies are always plucking these weird little things out of obscurity. So who knows?
It's very true. Yeah.
Who knows? But I guess we should do it chronologically with High Tension first.
Yeah, because this was...
Oh, it's Tony names.
This was released in the UK under the... I'm going to lay my cards on the table here regarding the name. The piss-poor name of Switchblade Romance. And it was released at a particularly thin time, I think, for Western horror. That basically, it was at that point around the turn of the millennium where everyone had just seen, like, Ring and The Grudge and things like that. And all of the West's horror filmmakers just went, no. We can't actually top that.
Yeah, that's kind of a weird time for me, because around that time I was like, oh my god, I adore horror. The Ring, Dark Water, films like that, this is the best. And then you get the American stuff that was coming out, and it basically, I mean, this is coming off a decade of late era slashers, which like, I Know What You Did Last Summer, I Know What You Did the Summer Before Last, and stuff like this.
My memory of What You Did Last Summer is fading as I am now senile, but I still have some knowledge of it.
That was a bad time for horror. It really, really was.
Completely,
and this is sort of like front end of the French extremism. It's not quite in the same wheelhouse as them, but it's lumped in with them nonetheless.
Yeah, it's a funny one, that, because I remember back when we did Cinema Eclectica, there was always this weird thing where Ryan, and if you're listening to this, Ryan, hello, but our co-host Ryan used to always sort of say, oh, Graham, I know you hate that new French Extremity stuff. And I thought, no, the bits I've seen of it I actually thought was good. It was the weirdest misinterpretation of me I've ever come across. It's normally I can at least see how I'm giving that impression, but no, I watched Inside, I thought it was good.
It's a bit neither knuckle as far as fames, but yeah. Yeah.
It's got Beatrice Dahl in it. I'm happy. I'm a simple man.
Whereas High Tension, let's see if we get the plot. Cécile de France, which is a name for a French person, all right.
But she's from Belgium. Oh. She's a goddamn liar, Rob.
My worldview has been broken now. I thought black was black and white was white, and now I don't know what's going on anymore. Let's see if I can pick myself up from that. But she is going to visit a friend in the country and stay with the family.
Yeah.
Pretty slow-paced start. They have like lunch with the entire family, and they go upstairs, the bed for the night. In the background, there's been shots of this. I don't know how you'd describe it, this shitty tank thing. Sort of powering its way through the beautiful French countryside. And in it is a serial killer, but he's not at the house yet. Before that, Cécile de France, I don't know how you'd describe this scene. So she's powering through to some reggae, I think, isn't it?
I don't know how you'd describe it, but that is not one of the ways I would describe it. After the John Waters episode, I think we're all euphemismed out. We've burned through our own material on the euphemism.
It was the movie, what was it called, from last year? It was one of my favourites. Lovers Rock. Yeah, Lovers Rock made... This is my reason anyway. Lovers Rock made reggae super sensual. So that's my justification for making that joke.
That's fine. I can dig it now.
But anyhow, that happens, and there's a knock on the door. Who should it be? It's the serial killer man. And he claws the face of the dad of the family. And from that point, he basically goes in a vendetta to basically kill everybody. And it's essentially a slasher, but one of the more mean-spirited and very gory. I don't even think in the 80s, like halcyon days, it hit the sort of nasty, mean-spirited, sinewy violence that it does in this.
Interesting. I think the thing that struck me, and this might be an expectation thing, because one of the few things I'd read about this film before going in was that the makeup artist is Gianetto De Rossi, who was Lucio Fulci's regular makeup artist. So immediately, oh, right, okay, fine.
I've got to get this out of the way. I have to get this out of the way, right? It's coloured my opinion of the movie pretty much spot on. When the killer has his cap on, he looks like Donald Trump. And I thought, oh, hell. I can't. He took the election loss really badly. It kept on sort of going through my head. Because it's uncanny. I mean, he looks different when you see his face, but sort of his partly silhouette and his cap, it's like, oh, wow, that's a MAGA supporter right there. And it might have undermined the tension a little bit. I'm not sure.
Because that guy is Philippe Nahon, who was a regular in Gaspar Noé's films. And he seems like the kind of guy who'd be a regular in Gaspar Noé's films, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. But, yeah, this is my first French extremism film. I mean, it's not really one, because French extremism seems to be a type of movie which is typified by having some sort of subtext to the extreme violence. Whereas this, it's just extreme violence.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Because when people talk about that new French extremity thing, they're really talking about two separate things. You've got the new French extremity of something like Leos Cavax's Paul X, or much as I hate her work, Catherine Breillat, where it's obviously originating from a kind of art house tradition. And then you've got stuff like Martyrs and Inside and this, which, I mean, I think they are appreciably different from other countries' gore movies, but they are still gore movies.
Yeah, I mean, they have a tradition of gore movies in France with the Grand Guignol. Well, you can't pronounce that, it's probably really wrong, but yeah, the theatre shows which were just blood everywhere and quite savage, and people went to be grossed out, really. And they also got a lot of controversy. There was a film a few years ago, I can't remember the name of it, but it was about that movement. It's just, it didn't wow me in any way, but it was an interesting sort of peer behind a curtain of a period of theatre history which is kind of overlooked besides sort of comparison points.
And I suppose even as we go forward into the 70s, you can talk about French horror as having a particular flavour with someone like Jean Rollin, whose films are also often very gory, but have a certain investment in atmosphere that I don't think is really there in this. I think there are bits of it that work, but it's certainly not as atmospheric as something like Fascination.
Yeah, I'm really wanting to wait. I hope that John Rollin pops up soon on this show, because I just need the excuse to dig into his stuff. And the name kind of paints a picture for this, though. It's called High Tension, so it's, well, one of it is Switchblade Romance is the other one, which I don't get, but we'll go.
That also paints a picture. It's just a really dumb picture that's made by a kid, like stabbing a canvas with a paintbrush.
Yeah, but a lot of it is, there's graphic killings and slaying. Killings that sound like those two people from League of Gentlemen, and how many killings does it have?
Yes, they would love this.
They would, yeah, they'd adore it. But there's really graphic killings, like the one at the beginning where the father has his head put between two banisters and sort of pushed off his head with like a bookcase or something, which is very silly. It's probably the silliest this movie gets.
Yeah.
Because it has that sort of typically Japanese gore effect where just blood sprays everywhere.
I was going to say, that was a bit that I was not expecting, because this came out like a year before Saw, I know, but I'd always kind of bracketed Ash's early stuff as part of that kind of torture porn stuff, and the torture porn stuff is very gory, but it's a kind of a joyless, grinding, kind of drudgery gore. Whereas this is just a completely mental hosepipe effect, like something out of Kill Bill.
Yeah, or that scene from Tenebrae when the woman's arm's chopped off and it just sprays about a swimming tank full of red paint everywhere.
Yes, it does. Yes. So I suppose that's part of why I guess I found it a bit more redeemable than you. I think there is a bit of exuberance in it. It's not made by people who just pompously want to remind you that the world sucks, like a lot of the torture cycle was.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it doesn't have it's mean-spirited in the sense of what the violence is and how it's enacted. But the way it's presented, the fact that you said it was from the person who worked with Lucio Fulci, it gives it a lot more context, that sort of violence. Yeah. It's still, I think it's just that sort of aspect of it. It's slow and it never looks away, which makes it sort of hard to watch, and got it a lot of bad criticism from a lot of high-profile people when it was released.
Well, there's one in particular, one very bad review that came from Dean Koontz, the legendary horror author, who was asked whether he thought the film was a rip-off of his novel Intensity. He said he did, but, and I quote, "He found the film so puerile, so disgusting, and so intellectually bankrupt that he didn't want the association that would come from suing."
That kind of makes me like it more, because honestly, Dean Koontz he's basically a poor man's Stephen King, isn't he?
Make me think when I read that, I did think, does Dean Koontz think he's been writing like Regency set romance novels all this time?
Maybe he got very high expectations of himself. I don't know.
Yes.
But we're going to have to spoil this one, I'm afraid, aren't we?
I think so. Yeah, definitely.
For a lot of it, it's kind of... It takes place in a house, and there's lots of savage violence. Cecile de Belgium gets away somehow, and she follows on with the killer, and Marie, I think, is the name of her friend.
Yeah.
And they get to a convenience store, and a little bit after that, there's a major, major twist, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Please skip forward about 10 minutes if you do not want to be spoiled by this.
Yeah. Essentially, a lot of those killings were done by Cecile de France. She just didn't realise it.
Yeah.
But there's also a killer who was killing everybody. So if she killed everybody, and he's a killer killing everybody, hang on. I'm confused. I can't even sort of picture it or plan it out in a sentence. Never mind actually what happens here.
Okay, mild defence time. I pictured it as being a sort of version of the Fight Club twist, where we see a separate killer because the killer has sort of compartmentalised her behaviour. She is imagining that this is being carried out by a big Donald Trump-looking guy who she saw in a Gaspar Noé movie. Because, if you ask me to create a completely loathsome person, that's what I'd go for, to avoid coping with the reality that she is doing it herself. I think it muddies that line significantly by bringing back Philippe Nahon after the twist, which is a big mistake. But I think it about works.
Yeah, it's bringing him back, which really makes it confusing. I mean, what are we supposed to believe? That if that killer disappeared and it was just Cecile de France who was doing it, that'd be a much different sort of kettle of fish what we're dealing with. But it's not, so it's just really confusing about what Aja's trying to go for.
I think the only valid explanation I could think of for bringing Nahon back is that maybe Cecile de France just couldn't lift the power saw at the end.
Yeah. It does. I mean, is he a real person? Is he not? Because he gets up after what should have been an absolute destruction of him, being hit over and over again by a baseball bat with barbed wire on it.
I interpreted him as being entirely imaginary, but it is kind of hard to tell, and they do fudge it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's presented in such a realistic register that it's sort of hard to grasp that now it's not in that same register. Now it's completely in the imagination of one of the characters. I know Fight Club doesn't make that of distinction, but it has that sort of aura about it where it feels a little dreamy around the edges. This is just pure, grimy, nihilistic realism.
I think the bit that makes it kind of work a bit better for me is that there is a subtextual level of kind of voyeurism and arousal in the initial home invasion scene where it does, as you say, start with Cecile de France's character listening to a lovely bit of dub reggae, and it has that kind of Blue Velvet bit where she watches one of the murders from inside the cupboard from this very voyeuristic perspective. So you can see that there's a kind of subtextual implication that she's enjoying this in some way that feeds into the ending a bit more, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird movie, this. I don't like it, but it's incredibly well made.
Yeah, I would agree. Don't you think it's a lot quieter than you expect it to be?
Yeah, I mean, the sound design is really rather marvellous. You could say and I have said it's incredibly vicious, but at the same time, it doesn't show all of the killings at all.
Yeah.
Some of them are done through like very subtle sound design.
I also appreciated that it's got one of the few Muse songs that I actually like on the soundtrack.
I like one album, and it was from that. So
yeah, that's a better description. I think that album is pretty solid, and after that, they sort of lost their way a bit.
Origin and Symmetry, I think it was from, and then they just sort of vanished up their own anuses. So
basically, yes, yeah. It hangs together and it's got some remarkable central performances, but at the crucial point, it does kind of trip over itself in a really irritating way.
I can understand why it broke out in a global sense, because I think this, it predated a lot of the French extremism stuff, and this style of French extremism anyway. And it had been a ball out of the blue for a horror, an era of horror which was kind of awful.
Yeah, absolutely. There was I vividly remember that there was just nothing like this when it came out.
Yeah, so he made hay while the sun shined. He really did launch a career off the back of this. So fair play to him.
Yeah, I think so. And it does have a central sort of brace of really, really effective performances. I mean, the last thing I saw Cecile de France in was Summertime, the Catherine Corsini film, in which she also plays a lesbian character, but which is otherwise, I think, quite different.
Yeah, on that point, I've seen a lot of angry takes about its treatment of lesbianism.
Yeah, I sort of dimly remember those. I don't know if maybe it was just that 2003 was a time when representation was pretty poor and we all were so starved that we had to pretend Will and Grace was good. But watched in the context of now, where you can just where you can watch it alongside Ammonite or something else like that, I wasn't that bothered by it, really.
Yeah, I mean, even on Letterboxd, there's been some contemporary takes on this. I mean, there is that subtext in some old slashes, how the killer ended up being gay and they chastised him for it and he become a savage murderer around high school campus. Yeah. So there's a history to this sort of thing.
Yeah, it's just a history that feels so... You have to be careful saying this because every time I've said... Oh, thank God we've moved on from that within the past, 25 years? It's turned out to be some hideous social ill that is now running rampant. But I think it's been long enough since we saw an old-fashioned gay serial killer movie for me to actually kind of enjoy them as a throwback thing now.
That's fair enough. But yeah, I have major reservations of it, but you can't dispute the craft of it at all.
You mentioned Letterboxd. There is one quote from Letterboxd that I absolutely love this. I can't remember which of his films I found it on, but big hat tip to Ava on Letterboxd, who said, "I want to call Alexandre Aja my favourite director, even though he kind of sucks."
That's kind of a perfect sum up of that guy, yeah.
I brought Louis a friend to keep him company.
Well, technically we're not allowed animals on the ward.
He's just a baby. He won't harm anyone. And Louis loves him.
Okay. I'll make an exception this one time. This one time. You're taking him home with you when you leave.
Thank you. Do you want to go for a walk? It's such a beautiful day outside. I was thinking of getting some air.
Okay. Short walk. Let Louis and his old friend get reacquainted.
The My Favourite Film podcast with me, Gav Smith.
And me, Gary Coleman.
Each episode, we talk to someone about their favourite film.
And as it's someone's favourite film, that must make it a recommendation, right?
That's right. We're like a book club for films. If you don't know what to watch, have a look through a list and see if there's something there. There's something there for every occasion.
And I, in particular, like episode 20, that guy talking about when Harry met Sally, I thought was brilliant.
I think he was. Can't remember his name. Gary something.
Something.
Not
I
sure.
can't remember now.
So join us
Good looking lad.
on the My Favourite Film podcast. It's available on all podcast platforms.
Or you can pop along to the website, www.myfavoritefilm.com, where you can find all the links you could ever need.
From us, till then, bye-bye.
Bye.
There was a little ad spot from one of the podcasts whose host, also guest host, on Directors Uncut. Just jumping in here to record this bit solo. Before we jump into the second movie on Alexandra Aja, we need to look at the next director. Now this is where it gets a little bit skittish, and it's testament to why we are making this a pure free podcast as opposed to a podcast which has some free and a Patreon exclusive, because the timelines get very, very muddled. So essentially what's going to happen here is I'll jump to a bit where we pick the new director, and then the episode following that isn't going to be that new director. It's going to be another one from the Patreon archive. So you can understand what I'm getting at a little bit here, I hope. It is getting a little bit muddled. But to keep up to date with what is happening and when, please do consider subscribing. If you're enjoying the podcast, whatever you get it, you can also follow me on Twitter at _RJ Simpson, or on Instagram at Directors Uncut Pod, all one word, and you keep up with the announcements there. But also, if you're enjoying the podcast, please do consider spending a few minutes to give us either a rating or review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Or, as the saying goes, sharing is caring. Give the podcast a share on social media, and it allows new eyes and ears to discover us. Make it your good deed for the day.
Two Gators down here. Okay, hold on. Don't move, hold on. Come here, Pete. Pete, you copy? Pete, goddammit, man, where are you? I need you down here now with a snare pole. Pete, you hear that?
So, from that, I guess we pick up the second film, which is 2019's Crawl.
I was looking this up and I thought, 2019, why does this feel like it was released 1,000 years ago?
Because 2019 was 1,000 years ago, Graham.
Completely, yeah. So this is his most recent film, and it's basically a good old-fashioned creature attack movie. Kaya Scodelario plays a swimmer, which, boy, does that come in handy, who is stranded in a rapidly flooding house in Florida during a hurricane with a father, played by Barry Pepper, and this being Florida, that flooding house is rapidly filling up with alligators as well as water. And we've got quite different perspectives on the creature attack movie, haven't we? As a genre, as a subgenre.
I mean, don't get me wrong, there's an awful lot of absolute dog crap out there. But the kind of like regional horror movies, you got to respect the hustle to get them made, the sort of cheekiness and the over-the-top nature of them. They're not meant to be taken seriously, so you just sort of like let them wash over you. Let the cheap, nasty crap wash over you.
You see, I generally hew close to the philosophy espoused by cinephile culture's leading critic of horror movies at the moment, Megan Thee Stallion, who said that she prefers horror movies where the villain has something in them that is kind of understandable and that you kind of like. And obviously with animal attack movies, you never quite get that.
I mean, I like it when they sort of interact with archive footage and it just doesn't jam at all, or there's literally a guy in a rubber suit. And within the realm of reality, there's not much else that you can really do that with.
Yeah, that's a fair point. What I think I'm building up to here is that maybe there is a gas leak in my home or something like that, but I watched Crawl and had a pretty good time with it.
Okay, I want to say this before you say why. But Barry Pepper plays the stupidest man on earth. That's all I've got to say.
Barry Pepper, who I will always respect for surviving Battlefield Earth.
No.
It plays a guy who makes worse choices in this movie than Barry Pepper does with his acting career, it's true.
Yeah, because there's little bits running through with it. It's the apex predator thing, which is just the cringiest thing I've ever seen in a movie. Because that's sort of the thing he uses to inspire his daughter when she's young. Says, "Don't let this beat you. What are you?" He says, "I'm an apex predator." "I never heard you. What are you?" "I'm an apex predator." And it kind of runs through the entirety of the film, doesn't it?
Between this and Wonder Woman 1984, I am thinking of seeing if I can persuade Joe Biden to pass some amendment that says any Hollywood movie using the phrase apex predator will be brutally penalised.
Well, at least on the credit of this one, the lead character doesn't turn into, I don't know, a leopard or some nonsense.
That would be the ultimate twist if Kaya Scodelario was so good at swimming because she is actually a big tuna.
Yes. I mean, there's little bits as well, like, Barry Pepper says, alligators can't, or crocodiles, I don't know, bloody the animal kingdom, says they can't see you when you don't move. Yeah, that's not true. I'm pretty sure that's not true.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I would not like to test it.
I'm pretty sure you just watched Jurassic Park there, Barry. That's different.
I have to say, nothing made me laugh more than the tagline for it. There's nothing in the film that is funnier than the tagline, which is something like, "They were here first." And it's like, oh, right, but they didn't, buy land. They didn't invest in property. It doesn't mean anything. They're not a displaced people.
Or are they? Yeah. That question there, or are they, has funded and made so many movies in Hollywood over the years.
I can't believe I'm the Doctor Who fan here and you're the one who's basically just pitched the Silurians.
Well, we've all got our off days. But, yeah, I mean, the one thing that really stuck out on you this is he still has that gore. That gore is still there.
Yeah.
nasty as well. I mean, it's not quite as in close and in as much focus as it was in his previous work, but it's there, definitely.
And it comes out in ways that are interesting. It's quite a while. I mean, it's about sort of 20 minutes before you get an alligator on screen, so there's that. But it's quite a while before you get the first really nasty alligator attack, and it does successfully lull you into a false sense of security over how harsh this film is going to be, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the first time you see it is when Barry Pepper's been bit or scratched or something on the shoulder, and the prosthetics are really, really grisly. Also on his leg, again, this is funding my idea that Barry Pepper is the stupidest human alive. The bone has basically been bit in half in his leg, but he gets some sort of tape and some sort of wood stuff and ties it on, and it's fine, I can walk now, it's okay. My leg isn't literally torn in half.
That's one of those amazing pieces of film medicine, though, isn't it? Like, a splint is basically magic, and any wound can be successfully sterilised just by pouring a bit of whiskey on it.
They're all MacGyver, Graham. They're all MacGyver.
I'm starting to understand why I had fun with this movie the more we talk about these things.
This is really weird because I said, you don't take animal attacks movies seriously. And what am I doing?
yeah, you're taking it very seriously.
Falling into my own trap. This is embarrassing.
I think there's plenty of things in here that are legit unironically good. I mean, you mentioned the sound design in High Tension. The sound design in this is astonishing. I first noticed it where Kaya Scodlario's character is in the car, and there is just this constant, not loud, but always present drumming of the rain on the roof. And it's such a simple thing, but it does so much to make the film feel really oppressive, you know? Really like there's no escape.
Yeah. I do like that. I mean, I'm just looping around, there is little things from animal attack movies that I do like, where somebody's come to rescue him and says, come and help us, there's alligators in here, we need help. It's all right, I'm going to stick my head over this giant hole and see what's there. Oh no, I've gotten bit on the face. How could that have happened?
Yeah.
These movies are lightning.
That's always
the lightning rods for idiots, these movies.
This cannot have been a very expensive movie, but I think effects-wise it looks good. I mean, maybe it looked different seeing it on a big screen. We'll never know because that was 10,000 years ago. But I did think the alligators looked pretty great.
I mean, they are CG, but the only way you couldn't have done that is make an incredibly expensive movie or a guy in a rubber suit.
Or endanger your cast with real alligators. The old Tippy Hedren
They did
method.
that for Raw, and that went perfectly well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good fun in it. I think I tried to look for something that I could be pretentious about, just, because here I am keeping up appearances. The only thing I could really find is that it's strange that this movie, like so many other movies that deal with a kind of hurricane or a flood or an extreme weather event, is obviously kind of drawing off the imagery that you saw in news reports of Hurricane Katrina. And it strikes me as strange that that disaster has been kind of referenced and homaged in so many movies, but it's never really had its United 93, hasn't it? There's never, as far as I'm aware, been an actual serious drama about what happened in New Orleans.
Yeah, they've all kind of displaced it through fantasy means, or through, what was it, I can't even remember now, Ben Zeitlin, Beast of the Southern Wild, just made the most obnoxious film in cinema history, but...
I was so glad when his follow-up to that tanked. I think that's been the one good side effect of COVID. It really shifted the release of Ben Zeitlin's new film.
He made a follow-up? Oh, I thought he just vanished and gracefully retired.
I remember reading a diary piece that he made when that film was inexplicably up for Oscars, and he said something like, "Oh, Barack Obama mentioned he saw the film. It feels so great that the leader of the free world could have experienced my film's ideas." And you think, ideas? Fucking hell. No wonder America doesn't have universal health care. The president is watching a goddamn film where you have to deplug someone from their life support system because they're all machines and they're plastic.
Oh, this is your button, is it?
It really is. I get life from hating beasts of the southern wild.
I mean, Crawl, it's lots of people do hate it, but it doesn't really have anything to hate about it. It's not like going for anything big. It's exactly what it sets out to be. It's animals attacking some doofuses in the rain.
Yes. You know who likes it too? You know who's a big fan of Crawl?
I don't know.
Quentin Tarantino.
Well, that's kind of a mixed blessing, isn't it? Have you seen his end of the year film lists? They are wacky.
Yes, I have. I suppose I kind of appreciate the fact that Tarantino is like remaining true to the kind of dumbass B movies that he liked back in the 60s and 70s. But yeah, his end of year lists are weird as hell.
And also, never listen to a podcast with Tarantino one, because if it's like normally an hour long, he's on it and it's 6 hours long. He can talk. Wow.
It's 6 hours long and you have to play it at half speed to like be able to hear an eighth of what he's saying.
I'm not even exaggerating either. They literally are that long. I mean, I like the Pure Cinema podcast, but the ones that he's on, I kind of give a miss because they're just so incredibly long. Oh, but yeah.
Americans don't edit these things, do they?
No, it's just unvarnished conversations that... I know they commute longer, but come on, get to the point a bit quicker, America.
Yeah, cast notes, because I'm always a big admirer of cast. I'd seen Kaya Scott Lavio in... I'm sure I've seen her in more things, but I mainly think of her as the lead in Andrea Arnold's Wuthering Heights, which I did not like. But she's actually good in this.
There's such a big dividing line, isn't there, with the Skins cast? You've got, Nicholas Hoult, Dev Patel, basically... Yep. Dev Patel basically being like a sex icon all of a sudden. When did that happen?
Yeah.
and then everybody else.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, but I think she's doing all right, and I think she is given a role here that must be kind of weird for a British, like, Channel 4 star, where you have to be an absolutely unironically glamorous American final girl in a horror movie. And she aces it. You know, there isn't a nod and a wink in her performance. She does it great.
I haven't seen Piranha, but that is entirely nods and winks as far as, the promotional campaign made it look anyway. But with these two movies, I think he's kind of underrated as a straight down the line, no frills horror director.
I would agree. Yeah.
There's not many of those.
Not many of those. One other minor thing too, that bit with her sister on the phone at the start. Did you spot who was playing her sister?
I didn't know.
It's good old Morfydd, never looks the same in two movies, Clark.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
That's kind of stealthy. She had that wild globe year last year with Saint Maud and the personal history of David Copperfield. So yeah, it's quite weird seeing her do this like little bit cameo in here, but she is great in it. She always is. She's in David Copperfield?
Of course, because she never looks the same in two movies. She's in David Copperfield twice, Rob. She plays David Copperfield's love interest and his mum.
I don't know if you're joking now or not, because I'm really confused.
If I was joking, I'd take a bigger swing. I'd say she also plays Paul Whitehouse, but no, that's literally true. She plays both of those roles.
Yeah. I really need to watch that movie again now, because,
definitely.
There's always a good reason to watch an Ianando. Oh, I've murdered his name there. Armando Iannucci movies.
You can just pretend that Iannucci is his full name. He's just called Ian Nucci. That's simpler.
That was probably a joke in his stand-up show. Not a stand-up show, sorry, his sketch comedy show from the early 90s.
That was a good show.
No, you know what? I'm fine. I've actually got a lot to do. I've got to figure out who really killed Marin and get him to confess.
How are you planning to do that?
Lately, I can be pretty fucking persuasive.
Hey, Egg! Nice look for you. Showing your true nature?
I'd appreciate it if you guys would all just fuck off.
Come on, Egg, admit you killed her. It'd be such a huge scoop for me.
Oh, good to know your journalistic integrity's fucking unimpeachable.
Hey, you confess to me, I can get out of stupid local news.
You know what? I got an idea. How about you guys beat the shit out of each other, and the winner gets an exclusive interview with me?
And for the back half of the show, I have been joined by Kat from the Hollywood News. Hello there.
Hello.
And Andy from Road to Nowhere with a K.
With a K, yep. Hi, how you doing?
Not bad. How are you two?
I'm fine. Yeah, I mean, it's. I've got a 3-year-old at home who is about to be off for 2 weeks for Easter, so I'm just clinging on to my sanity before that kicks in, making the most of those 12 hours I get without her this week.
It's a small victories.
Yeah.
Andy, all good?
Yeah, I'm fine. I've just had a long weekend off work. I also have a 3-year-old who. She's been wild today, actually, but she's been good wild. But her and my wife have actually got COVID at the minute, so they're having to isolate. Well, I'm not isolating from them, but somehow I've not caught it yet.
You're very, very lucky.
Well, I mean, I could get a week off work.
Well, yeah, that too. Yeah, my sister, who's got an 18-year-old, insists that this is the 3-year-old is the good days, and she trade it for like any day of the week. So take from that what you will, I guess.
Aye, good and bad. I suppose same ever.
I'm surprised that neither want to bring up the Oscars, but I've got to mention it just in passing. I don't have any horse in the race, and I'm not sure you two do too, but it just was very mediocre this year, I'll be honest.
It's been my plan to stay up and watch it, because I don't usually. Again, it's on Sunday night, so I'm usually up early for work. But I had a look at the lists, and I just thought, there's not anyone I particularly care about that's up for anything, so I just went to my bed. And I'm quite gutted I did now. I've seen all the drama.
Well, drama.
Aye. Will Smith's drama.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm not somebody that ever sort of stays up or is tempted to, but I mean, this year, I guess more than any others, I hadn't seen a lot of the ones that were nominated. I guess because a lot of stuff's gone on to various streaming platforms, and, you know, they're like harder to collect than Pokemon, all these different streaming services. So I just kind of gave up.
Yeah. A Coda one, that was a weird one on Apple Plus. I had a 6 months of that, and it's just, not worth it. Yeah. So back end of the show, we talk about, back end of this show in particular, previously we talked about Alexander Aja, and it's only fair to give you two an opportunity, if you have any opinion on him.
I've seen Crawl recently, and I really enjoyed Crawl. It's a good kind of, do you call that a monster movie? Not really.
Technically.
Yeah, the alligators. It was fine, yeah. I got a decent hour and a half out of that. Other than that, I've seen Mirrors years ago, and I couldn't tell you anything about it. And I think I've seen the House of Eyes remake. Again, though, in fact, from what I remember, the House of Eyes remake is a lot more kind of OTT with the violence than the original. Yeah. But that was just that kind of time period, wasn't it?
And him, yeah.
Aye, is that quite a common thing?
His High Tension Switchblade Killer, super graphic, right? Except for a slasher. Kat, any thoughts on Aja?
See, I really like him. I remember watching, it was Switchblade Romance when I rented it, and I really liked that. So then I kind of made it a point to sort of follow what came next. I really like his Hills of Ice remake. It actually taught me a very valuable lesson about not going to sleep listening to music with your iPod headphones in, because that's what I was doing at the time at uni, and that's how Emily de Raven sort of comes a cropper. So that was kind of, I was sort of watching it and my blood sort of went cold, like that's how I go to, maybe I shouldn't do that anymore, that's probably not safe. And I mean, Mirrors, I'm a big Keith Sutherland fan, so I had to get Mirrors watched. It's probably one of his weaker films. And Crawl is just gave me one of the best press screenings I think I've ever been to. So I went to watch it in Dolby. So the sound was ridiculous. But I also happened to be sitting next to a guy who was deathly phobic of alligators. So he kept throwing himself back in his chair, like his feet were on the chair and everything. I don't know. It's almost like he thought that, I guess, the PRs had released a gator into the screen or something for that 4D experience. He was squealing. So it just really made the film a lot more engaging, I guess. So yeah, I'll always give his work the time because I think he does some fun things.
Excellent. So what have we been watching? Who wants to jump in first with their... It could be for a podcast. It could be some reviews you've done recently. It's completely open playing field. So who wants to jump in?
The last thing I saw in the cinema was Ty West's X, which I really liked. I've not seen much of his previous work, but I enjoy the Innkeepers and House of the Devil. But this was very different to both of those, and I kind of liked how it was different. I thought it had a lot of interesting things to say, which I won't necessarily get into because spoilers, because it's still quite new. But I just loved that he cast Brittany Snow, because I've been a Brittany Snow stan for a while. I mean, she ill-advised made the Prom Night diluted remake. But I've got a lot of time for the work that she does, and she just steals every scene that she's in this. And she plays like Bobby Lynn, who's this sort of like wannabe porn star stripper, and she just has a lot of fun with her role.
It's quite a left turn as well, because his previous stuff, Innkeepers, House of the Devil, quite low-key dread things, like dread horror, but this couldn't be more different from the sound of it, which is a surprise, really, because he didn't seem like the sort to do this sort of exploitation thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, it wasn't as like over the top as maybe some people are suggesting. I think he does sort of play his cards close to his chest for a lot of the film. It's only sort of towards the end where he lets loose. But yeah, it was nice to sort of see a different sort of style from him.
Oh, cool. Anything else?
I spent the majority of last week watching one documentary because it was 7 hours long.
Oh, wow.
It's the Crystal Lake Memories. I think it's from 2013, but it's just been released on digital, and it's getting a Blu-ray release in a couple of weeks. And it's an exhaustive look at everything to do with the Friday the 13th franchise, including the TV series. And it's like half an hour to an hour on each of those things with talking heads from cast and crew. And it is your one-stop shop if you've ever wanted to know anything about any of the Friday the 13th films. I thought the first, because it's so long, it's split over 2 discs. I found the first disc a little dry because I think I've seen a lot of documentaries on the first Friday the 13th and some of the other ones.
Yeah.
But the second disc, which delves into Jason X and Freddy versus Jason and the reboot, I found really interesting because I don't think they've been covered too much. There's a lot of time spent with Jason X, where even the cast sort of admit that we know this film's terrible, but that's kind of what you want from this sort of film, right? So it's...
well, yeah. Just out of curiosity, I have to ask, how many Friday the 13th are there? Because it's kind of the franchise that just won't die.
If you include the reboot, there's 12. So they really are ripe to do, at least one more to have the 13th Friday the 13th. So
yeah, that seems like a no-brainer. That really.
Yeah.
I think they're all caught up in ownership rights and things as well, isn't it? It's the issues with it. Same with Freddy as well. I think it's something to do with that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's like a lot of movie. I like Hong Kong cinema, and I realise that a lot of that isn't going to see the light of day again because the ownership rights are controversial, notorious in Hong Kong for just weird people owning weird things. Andy?
I've also seen X, so that last week I thought it was great. Of Ty West stuff, yeah, I've seen House of the Devil and The Innkeepers as well. I did think it was actually quite a slow burn sort of. It is a lot more than
really?
Yeah. I'm thinking. I mean, you're about an hour and 50-minute movie, and it's maybe not until the last kind of 20 minutes, half an hour, where things really, really kick off.
So they've really put a lot of spoilers in those trailers then, because that's what it all basically seems like, just sleaze.
Yeah, I don't think it's a spoiler. No, I'll try not to say anything about it. But Kat's seen it, and she'll know from the way the movie opens, kind of sets you up for what's going forward. And it's kind of like looking for hints and tips as to what's coming, sort of thing. But yeah, it's quite slow, but then it goes graphic really, really fast. Yeah.
That's cool, yeah.
And speaking of alligators and crocodiles, there's a couple of great scenes where I think it's an alligator in that as well. It was brilliant.
Is it a CG alligator stroke crocodile?
I think so. One point anyway.
I remember reading an interview with one of the cast members that is involved with the gator, and it was actually 3 practical gators, I think, with some CG mixed in as well. But to get like a rolling maneuver and things, they had a practical gator that would roll, and there would be one that would swim. So yeah, it was actually they went all in.
It's the right way to do that sort of thing, I feel. Yeah, cool. Anything else?
The Batman, saw that. The said day after it came out.
Widely divided opinion, that one.
I think having time, obviously we come out of a movie and you're hyped up from seeing it, and at the time I was really positive, really, really positive on it, and I kind of still am. Like, I'd probably put it above the Nolan ones overall. Because it feels like a Batman movie. It's about Batman. It's not really... Nolan was kind of interested in the duality of Bruce and Batman and that element of it. This movie's not really about if Bruce is a kind of a side character almost in it. He's barely in it. It is just about the Batman, which I thought was great. And it's the best depiction of Gotham City I think we've had in one of the live action.
Even better, I mean, I don't have great fondness for the original ones, but the 1980s one, the name of the director is completely brain farted out of my head.
Tim
Burton. How could I forget him? But that's the one thing I remember about those movies. The Gotham and them were pretty stellar, I'll be honest. So it'd be better than that. That's pretty a high claim.
Yeah, I mean, again, I like those ones, but I'm not massive on them. So that probably colours my judgment a wee bit as well. I think just because it feels more... This is maybe a bit contradictory to say it, because Tim Burton made a really hyper comic book style movie, I think, but without really having interest in the lore and the characters. This one feels like a lived-in type of Gotham that you would see, you could imagine being a kind of real-world city, more so than the old Burton ones.
Cool. I mean, I will catch it eventually, but it's just 3 hours long. That's such a ordeal to really fit that in any sort of day.
Yeah, I mean, I had a nap during it. It was. I was going. I think it's speeding by. It's going. The pace is actually going really fast, and then just towards the end, my brain just gave up and had like a 5-minute nap. So I need to go back at some point to sort of fill in those few minutes.
Bring back cinema intervals.
Definitely.
Could do with it, especially for one that long. And I'd had beer, I'd been drinking, so I was needing to go to the toilet. It just came to a point where I thought, this is a really quiet bit, so I'm going to go. And then when I came back, the wife said, "Oh, you've missed like probably the most important part of the movie." I was like, shit.
I've got 2. I think they were both Sundance debuts. Fresh and The Master. Or is it just Master?
Master. Yeah. Yeah, they were both at Sundance.
I'll talk about the one I liked more first. Fresh, from Me Cave, which is, if I'm going to spoil it, it's easy to talk about, very, very easy to talk about. But if I'm going to avoid talking about spoilers, it becomes a little bit more of, well, impossible, really.
Yeah.
It starts off as a typical sort of contemporary era romantic comedy, even with that horrible trope, which I hope this is a point of self-awareness from the scriptwriters, of having the sassy black friend, which is such a trope in romantic comedies.
Yeah.
I hope that was intentional. She meets Sebastian Stan, who is very, very charming. She has this horrible date with this guy who basically criticised the way she's dressing, and it's just a disaster for her. 30 minutes in.
Such a dick, that guy.
Oh,
he really is.
Just everything.
Yeah.
And 30 minutes in, it's like, I can't remember seeing like a title drop outside of the ones which you get before the end credits, quite as late as this. And when that title card drops, it completely upends the entire film.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's one of these things. It's on Disney Plus, which I think for American listeners, that might be a little bit mind-blowing because our Disney Plus is quite different. One thing, it's always keeping you guessing. The story and where it goes, I don't think anybody would really expect going in, even with the little bits you see in trailers and posters. I don't think it really becomes predictable. One thing I will say, though, is I think its execution's a bit weird. It's a bit flat, it's a bit televisual, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
There's something I can't put my finger on. I really enjoyed it. The third act is very cathartic. It kind of calls back to maybe Last House on the Left with one of the way that the big end off finishes, so to speak. But yeah, I don't know. It just felt like there's something not quite there. I'm assuming both of you have seen it.
Yes.
Yeah. What are your feelings on Fresh?
I really enjoyed it, yeah. I thought it was a kind of similar to yourself. I'd avoided most trailers, avoided even reviews for it, but I'd seen the kind of positive consensus on Twitter that was going about just a couple of nights before it came out on Disney+. But I had kind of went in, for want of a better word, fresh. And then, having seen posters and things, I had what I thought was an idea, but it wasn't the way it was going. The way it went wasn't what I thought. Yeah, there was, as much as I did enjoy it, it did feel like there was something missing. I don't know if it was maybe, it's obviously they're not a film intended to be this way, but maybe a wee bit more nastiness missing from it. Like,
it's pretty nasty.
Yeah. I know, yeah, kind of similar to yourself, though. There was something that felt missing for me. It didn't need to be nastier, but I don't know if that's maybe what
I caught it at Sundance, so there wasn't the opportunity for any sort of spoilers to be out at that point in time. And I sort of really liked it. I will say I feel like it's just slightly too long. I mean, it's almost 2 hours, I think. I just kind of feel that maybe shave 10, 15 minutes off would have made it a little bit tighter, especially around the end, because it kind of gets into the territory where it's trying to end itself a few too many times. But I loved the setup where you kind of know what sort of film you're in for, so you know that something's not going to be quite right, but you don't know whether it's going to be him or her. And there's just this great bit where I think they're having takeaway, and she orders like a load of meat, and he's like, "Oh, I don't eat animals," and she's like, "Oh my god, I didn't realize that you were a vegetarian." And then obviously later on, you kind of realize that the other meaning of that phrase that he says, because he's very particular with the words he chooses. He doesn't say he doesn't eat meat.
Yes.
And I think that's a really, I kind of liked that sort of cleverness within the script.
I mean, it's satire seeping out of every little bit of it. Satire and dating is pretty much the backbone of it. But yeah, it's great, and I'm looking forward to what Mimi Cave does in the future.
Definitely.
And Master, Mariama Diallo, is the other one, which I don't think is quite as successful. It's effectively about institutionalized racism in white institutions in America, or just white America, effectively. The story is told from two perspectives. One is from the perspective of a student, and one is from I don't really think they've got a contemporary or opposite here. Housemaster. It's kind of a bit lost on these shows, but it's one of these. It's being compared to Get Out, I think, unfairly. That's quite complimentary of it and exposes it quite a bit. It's interesting in the sense of it's telling this great story, but I think its problem is I don't think it knows what it really wants to do, because the horror always seems very, very half-hearted. There's great bits, like, I don't know whether this is intentional again, there's like a running commentary through a lot of people, how a lot of black filmmakers, about lighting black skin properly, and nobody's lit properly in this. It's just really either poorly lit or very satirical, and I don't quite know which one. So, yeah, it's exposed by just the horror being bad, and there not being enough of the other aspect of it, the storytelling and the satire of it. So, yeah, I'm not sure of this one. I think it's a bit of a swing and a miss, unfortunately.
When I first started watching it, I was enjoying it and enjoying what I thought it was setting up. But then for me, the ending just didn't really land. Like I felt like I'd missed something. had missed a part of a story that
It felt like it was lost in the edit, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, like the whole, obviously, without going into spoilers, there's like a revelation that gets addressed, and is it about one character's paranoia? Is it about something more sinister? There's like cloaked figures, or a cloaked figure running around, and again, maybe I've missed something, or maybe I've just picked my phone up at the wrong time, but I just felt that there was at least a good 10-15 minutes what's the word, when someone's like telling the plot in the movie.
Exposition.
Oh God, I took such a blank there. Yeah, it felt like there was just like an extra exposition drop just missing somewhere. Like,
oh, that's interesting, because that character, Captain Exposition, there's always that one character who just, his only role in it is to come on and explain the plot.
Aye.
Like the guy in Pontypool, he's a good one. He explains everything.
Yeah.
But,
something just. I think if it had went the way I thought it was going to be, it would have been better. Not saying that I would have made it better, but I mean, just the right filmmakers.
Yeah, I also wasn't particularly a fan. Again, I caught it at Sundance, and I decided not to review it just because I just thought it was a bit dull, and I just didn't. I think, like you're both saying, I just didn't quite get exactly what it was trying to say. It just seemed that its message was just a bit muddled and a bit confused.
And you just couldn't see. The horror was undermined by everything being so dark. I don't know where I'm supposed to be looking or what's supposed to be happening.
Yeah, I got very confused as to what was actually supposed to be the horror within it. In some ways, I was expecting it to be, not necessarily an urban legend sort of film, but it's set at a university, so I was expecting there to be something to it more than I got.
Yeah. If you want listeners, if you want a movie about living in a white country as a black family, watch His House.
Oh, it's excellent.
That's amazing. But yeah, I think that's all we have for this episode with Alexandra Aja. And that's us for another episode. If you have any questions or any comments on the films we've covered, all their makers, that includes all of Season 1, check the feed for some of the other names. We'd love to hear your comments on those directors and those films. We'll be talking about those in the Season 1 finale, which should come early July. So get your emails in early at directorsuncutpod@gmail.com. Kat, where can we find you online?
My Twitter is @GizmoShikari, and most of my writing is on www.thehollywoodnews.com.
Excellent. And Andy?
Just basically Twitter. I'm at Knowhere Andy, and the podcast Twitter account is at Where Is Knowhere with a K.
Okay. Yes. And earlier I was joined by Graham Williamson. Links to where you can find them in the description below. But I have been Rob Simpson, and that has been Directors Uncut.